There are moments in life when everything you've built can crumble in an instant, and I want to tell you about one of those moments that happened to a man who thought he had finally made it in America. A story that will make you question everything you think you know about success, belonging, and the fragile nature of the American dream. Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, and Marcus Chen is standing in his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the sun paint golden streaks across Lake Michigan while the city below hums with the energy of 8 million people chasing their own dreams. The coffee in his ceramic mug, the one his daughter Emma made him in art class with her tiny handprints pressed into the clay and painted bright blue, is still steaming, sending wisps of aromatic vapor into the climate-controlled air of an office that cost more to furnish than most people make in a year. He's reviewing the quarterly reports that show his tech company, Chen Industries, just hit another record month, with revenues that would make Fortune 500 companies envious and profit margins that have attracted buyout offers from tech giants in Silicon Valley. 3,000 employees across 12 states, all depending on the vision he built from nothing more than a second-hand laptop and a dream 15 years ago, when he was just another scared immigrant kid trying to make sense of a country that seemed both welcoming and terrifying at the same time. But can you imagine how quickly that sense of accomplishment, that feeling of having conquered the impossible, can turn into your absolute worst nightmare? At exactly 9:47 a.m., he'll remember that time for the rest of his life because it's burned into his memory like a brand. His assistant Sarah's voice comes through the mahogany-paneled intercom, trembling in a way he's never heard before in the 8 years she's worked for him, telling him there are federal agents in the lobby asking for him by name, their badges gleaming under the crystal chandeliers of the reception area that was featured in Architectural Digest just last month. The mug slips from his fingers as if his body has forgotten how to hold on to things, shattering against the imported Italian marble floor with a sound like his world breaking apart. Dark coffee spreading like an ominous stain across the pristine white stone that he chose because it reminded him of the clean slate he thought he'd earned in America. His heart pounds so hard he can feel it in his throat, in his temples, in his fingertips as they grip the edge of his mahogany desk. And he realizes with crystalline clarity that this isn't about taxes or business compliance or any of the routine headaches that come with running a billion-dollar company. This is about the one thing he's feared every single day since arriving from Taiwan as a 19-year-old student with nothing but a suitcase full of dreams and a head full of doubts. But what could they possibly want with someone who's followed every rule, paid every fee, hired the best immigration lawyers money can buy, and built what everyone calls an American success story? The elevator ride down feels like descending into a nightmare where physics works differently and time stretches like taffy, each floor number lighting up like a countdown to his destruction. 41, 40, 39, each ding of the bell sounding like a death knell as he watches his reflection in the polished brass doors. A successful CEO in a $5,000 suit who suddenly looks like a frightened immigrant boy all over again. When the doors finally open with that familiar whisper of hydraulics, he sees them immediately. 2 agents in dark suits standing near the black granite security desk like twin monuments to government authority, their expressions unreadable behind aviator sunglasses that reflect the lobby's soaring glass ceiling. Their presence making every employee in the marble and crystal lobby suddenly find urgent reasons to stare at their phones or dive into conversations that sound forced and artificial. The click of his Italian leather shoes against the marble echoes like gunshots in a space designed to impress clients and investors, each step bringing him closer to a confrontation he's rehearsed in nightmares but never believed would actually happen. Agent Rodriguez, a woman with steel gray eyes and silver streaking her black hair, shows him her badge with the fluid motion of someone who's done this 1,000 times before, speaking in that official tone that turns your blood to ice and makes your mouth go dry. Mr. Chen, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding your immigration status and certain irregularities that have come to our attention. How do you explain to 3,000 people that their jobs, their mortgages, their children's futures might disappear because of a mistake made decades ago by a scared teenager who barely spoke the language? The walk through his own lobby becomes a perp walk through a space he designed to inspire confidence and success, every face he passes filled with confusion and growing panic as whispers spread like wildfire through the atrium where motivational quotes are etched into the walls in 7 different languages, a tribute to the diverse workforce he's so proud of building. These aren't just employees with ID badges and parking spaces. They're families he's helped support through layoffs at other companies, mortgages he's helped secure with reference letters and bonuses, children whose college funds depend on the stability and growth he's provided year after year. Jenny from accounting, who just bought her first house in Evanston with a down payment from her profit-sharing bonus, drops her stack of quarterly reports when she sees him flanked by federal agents, papers scattering across the marble like autumn leaves as her face goes white with the realization that everything might be about to change. Mike from IT, whose wife Sarah is battling stage 3 breast cancer and relies on the company's platinum-level health insurance plan that covers experimental treatments other companies wouldn't touch, stands frozen by the executive water cooler. His face pale with the understanding that flows between people who've worked together long enough to communicate without words. The whispers follow him like a rising tide of anxiety and speculation. Is Marcus in trouble? Are we going to lose our jobs? What's happening to the company? Should I call my wife? Should I update my resume? But how can he reassure them when he doesn't even know what's happening to himself? When his own future suddenly feels as uncertain as it did on that first day he set foot in America. Outside, the Chicago wind cuts through his suit jacket like a blade made of lake-effect cold, carrying the scent of snow and exhaust and the dreams of 8 million people, as they guide him toward a black sedan with government plates that gleams under the gray November sky like something from a spy movie he never wanted to star in. The leather seats are cold against his back as Agent Rodriguez sits beside him, her badge catching the light from the tinted windows, opening a manila folder that seems to contain his entire life reduced to official documents and stamps and the bureaucratic debris of a system that can build you up and tear you down with equal efficiency. Mr. Chen, she begins, her voice softening slightly as if she's genuinely sorry to be the bearer of news that could destroy everything he's worked for. There's been a question raised about your original student visa application from 2008. Specifically, a discrepancy in your sponsor documentation that could potentially invalidate your entire immigration chain, every visa, every green card application, every step you've taken toward becoming an American. The words hit him like physical blows because he remembers that application with painful clarity, remembers the confusion and the desperate scramble to get all the paperwork right while barely speaking English, remembers trusting people who said they would help him navigate a system that seemed designed to trip up anyone who wasn't born understanding its Byzantine complexities. What happens when one small mistake from your teenage years, one moment of misplaced trust in a system you didn't understand, can destroy everything you've spent your adult life building brick by brick? The federal building downtown looms like a fortress of gray concrete and broken dreams, its windows reflecting nothing but cold sky and the bare branches of November trees, a monument to bureaucracy that has decided the fates of millions of immigrants with a stroke of a pen or the stamp of a seal. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzz overhead with that particular government building frequency that makes your teeth ache, casting harsh shadows as they lead him through corridors lined with photos of presidents who seem to watch him with expressions ranging from benevolent to stern, past offices where other people's fates are being decided by strangers with rubber stamps and computer databases that reduce human lives to case numbers and filing dates. The interview room smells like disinfectant and fear and the accumulated anxiety of thousands of people who've sat in these same chairs, wondering if their American dreams were about to become deportation nightmares, with its metal table bolted to the floor as if previous occupants might have tried to use it as a weapon or a shield, and chairs that screech against the scarred linoleum when you move them, a sound that sets your nerves on edge and reminds you that nothing here is designed for comfort. Agent Martinez, a younger man with kind eyes that seem at odds with his federal badge and the power it represents, spreads the documents across the table like evidence at a crime scene, each piece of paper a potential nail in the coffin of the life Marcus has built. The university that sponsored your original visa, he explains, pointing to a letterhead that looks suddenly foreign and suspicious despite being from the institution where Marcus earned his computer science degree with honors. Northwestern Pacific University was found to have submitted fraudulent documentation for several international students during the period when you applied. We're talking about a systematic scheme that may have affected hundreds of students who trusted the school to handle their paperwork correctly. Can you imagine discovering that your American dream was built on someone else's lie? That your success story might be nothing more than a house of cards built on fraudulent foundations? Meanwhile, back at the gleaming headquarters of Chen Industries, the news is spreading like wildfire through the 42 floors of innovation and ambition, carried by instant messages and whispered conversations and the kind of corporate gossip that moves faster than official announcements. In the break room on the 15th floor, Software engineers who normally debate the merits of different programming languages are now huddled around smartphones, frantically Googling immigration law and deportation procedures, their afternoon lattes growing cold as they realize their stock options might be worthless if their CEO gets sent back to a country many of them have never even visited. The marketing team on the 23rd floor has called an emergency meeting, not about the product launch they've been planning for months or the Super Bowl commercial that's supposed to air in February, but about updating their resumes and reaching out to headhunters and figuring out how to explain to future employers why their last job might have been at a company that no longer exists. Rebecca Martinez, the head of human resources who's been with the company for 8 years and has personally hired over half the current workforce, sits in her corner office staring at 3,000 employee files, each one representing not just a person but entire families whose lives could be turned upside down if Marcus doesn't walk back through those doors with his freedom intact. How do you prepare for the possibility that the heart and soul of your company might be ripped away by forces beyond anyone's control, by bureaucratic decisions made in windowless rooms by people who've never met the man whose life they're dissecting? The questioning continues for hours that feel like years, each document examined like a piece of a puzzle that doesn't quite fit together the way it should, each question probing deeper into decisions Marcus made as a teenager who was more focused on surviving his first American winter than understanding the long-term implications of paperwork he signed in offices that smelled like copy toner and desperation. Marcus explains over and over, in a voice that grows hoarser with each repetition, how he trusted the university's international student office, how he was 19 and overwhelmed and just trying to follow the rules in a language that still felt foreign on his tongue, how he paid every fee and showed up to every appointment and believed that doing everything by the book would be enough to earn his place in America. His throat grows dry from talking, his expensive suit wrinkled from the stress sweat that no amount of antiperspirant can prevent, his wedding ring clicking against the metal table as his hands shake slightly with each answer, a nervous habit his wife Emma teases him about during normal times that now feels like a tell in a poker game where the stakes are his entire life. Agent Rodriguez takes notes in a small spiral pad, her pen scratching across the paper like a time bomb ticking down to his deportation, occasionally looking up to study his face as if she's trying to read his soul through his expressions. "Mr. Chen," she says finally, looking up from her notes with an expression that could mean anything, "I have to ask you directly, and I need you to understand that your answer could determine everything that happens next. Did you know the documentation was fraudulent when you submitted your application? And did you have any reason to suspect that the university was not handling your case in accordance with federal immigration law?" The question hangs in the air like a sword suspended over his head by the thinnest of threads, because how do you prove you didn't know something 15 years ago? How do you demonstrate innocence when the very act of being questioned makes you feel guilty? As the sun begins to set over Chicago, painting the federal building's windows in shades of orange and red that remind him of the sunsets he used to watch from his childhood bedroom window in Taipei, Marcus's phone has been buzzing constantly with calls from his lawyers, his board of directors, his wife who's trying to explain to their 12-year-old daughter why daddy might not be coming home for dinner, why the life they've built together might be about to change in ways they can't control or predict. The battery icon shows 15%, and he realizes this small rectangle of metal and glass might be his only connection to the life he's built if they decide to detain him tonight, if this room becomes his last taste of freedom before being processed through a system that turns people into numbers and statistics. Agent Martinez excuses himself to make a phone call, leaving Marcus alone with Agent Rodriguez, who suddenly seems less like an immigration officer with the power to destroy his life and more like someone who's seen too many families torn apart by bureaucratic mistakes and technicalities, someone who carries the weight of too many deportations and broken dreams. "Off the record," she says quietly, leaning forward slightly and lowering her voice to barely above a whisper, "You've built something remarkable here. 3,000 jobs, millions in taxes paid, a company that's contributed more to this economy than some Fortune 500 corporations, a real contribution to this country that goes beyond just following the rules. But if that's true, then why does it feel like none of that matters when faced with a single piece of fraudulent paperwork from his teenage years? Why does success in America feel so fragile when it can be undone by mistakes made by other people in offices he never even visited? The waiting is the worst part. Sitting in that sterile room while strangers in distant offices review his fate like a case file rather than a human life, while bureaucrats who've never met him decide whether the past 15 years of building and creating and employing and contributing count for anything in the face of paperwork irregularities from his youth. He thinks about the first day he walked into that tiny office space in 2009. Just him and 2 folding tables borrowed from a church basement and a dream of building something that mattered. Something that would prove he belonged in this country that had given him so much opportunity. He remembers the first employee he hired, Sarah, who was fresh out of Northwestern and believed in his vision when venture capitalists laughed him out of their glass conference rooms, who worked for equity instead of salary because she saw something in his ideas that the established tech world couldn't recognize. He thinks about the company picnics where 3,000 people and their families celebrated success they all built together. Children running around with balloons and face paint while their parents talked about stock options and profit sharing, and the American dream made manifest in quarterly bonuses and healthcare plans that covered everything from routine checkups to emergency surgeries. How can 15 years of building something meaningful, something that employs teacher spouses and supports single mothers and provides health insurance for cancer patients, be reduced to questions about documents he signed as a confused teenager who barely understood the system he was trying to navigate? Just when the silence becomes unbearable, when the fluorescent lights start to feel like instruments of torture and the ticking of the wall clock sounds like a countdown to disaster, Agent Martinez returns with his phone pressed to his ear, nodding at whatever voice is speaking to him from Washington or wherever these life-changing decisions get made by people who never have to look into the eyes of the families they're destroying. He hangs up and exchanges a look with Agent Rodriguez. One of those wordless communications that happen between partners who've worked together long enough to speak in glances and raised eyebrows and subtle head movements that carry more meaning than entire conversations. "Mr. Chen," Agent Martinez says. His voice carrying a tone Marcus can't quite read, something between sympathy and excitement. "We've been in contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Homeland Security about your case, and there have been some developments that change everything we thought we knew about your situation." The words send ice through Marcus's veins because he knows that when federal agencies start coordinating and having conference calls about your case, it usually means someone's life is about to change forever. Usually not in a good way. What news could possibly be important enough to involve multiple government departments in the fate of one immigrant, even a successful one? But then something unexpected happens. Something that makes Agent Rodriguez smile for the first time all day. A genuine expression that transforms her entire face and makes her look like someone's grandmother instead of a federal agent with the power to destroy lives. "The university in question," she explains, pulling out a new document that wasn't in the original folder. A document that looks official and important and somehow hopeful. Northwestern Pacific University has been under federal investigation for the past 3 years as part of a joint FBI and Immigration Services operation called Operation False Promise. The Bureau has been building a comprehensive case against the administrators who were systematically selling fraudulent sponsorship letters to international students, charging them thousands of dollars for documents that weren't worth the paper they were printed on. Marcus's heart stops beating for what feels like a full minute as she continues, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering news that will change everything. "You weren't just a victim of document fraud, Mr. Chen. You were an unwitting witness to a federal crime that affected hundreds of students and generated millions of dollars in illegal profits for corrupt university officials." The revelation hits him like a physical force, like being struck by lightning or hit by a truck. Because suddenly he's not the accused but a key witness in a case that could put corrupt officials behind bars and help other victims get the justice they deserve. How do you process the moment when your worst nightmare transforms into your salvation? When the thing you thought would destroy you becomes the key to everything you've ever wanted? The room suddenly feels different, charged with possibility instead of dread. The fluorescent lights somehow seeming brighter and the air easier to breathe, as if the universe has shifted on its axis and rearranged itself in his favor. Agent Martinez leans forward, his voice taking on an almost conspiratorial tone, the voice of someone sharing state secrets or offering membership in an exclusive club. "The Justice Department wants to offer you full immunity from any immigration violations related to the fraudulent documents, expedited citizenship processing that could have you taking the oath within 6 months instead of the usual multi-year wait, and witness protection if needed in exchange for your testimony about the fraudulent application process you experienced, and any communications you had with university officials." Marcus blinks, wondering if the stress and fluorescent lights have made him hallucinate, if his mind has snapped under the pressure and is now creating fantasy scenarios to protect him from reality. Because did a federal agent just offer him the one thing he's dreamed of for 15 years, the thing he's applied for and been denied and reapplied for with better lawyers and more documentation? "You mean," he says slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, afraid that speaking too loudly might break whatever spell has transformed his interrogation into his salvation. "I could become a citizen? An actual American citizen with a passport and voting rights and everything?" Agent Rodriguez nods, and for the first time since this morning began with coffee and quarterly reports, her smile seems genuine and warm. "Mr. Chen, your testimony could help us shut down a criminal enterprise that's been exploiting vulnerable international students for years, stealing their money and their dreams and their futures. You'd be helping to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Can you imagine the moment when everything you thought was falling apart suddenly becomes the key to everything you've ever wanted? When your darkest hour becomes the dawn of a new chapter you never dared to dream possible?" The phone call he makes to his wife from that sterile federal building is one he'll remember for the rest of his life, standing in a hallway lined with motivational posters about citizenship and civic duty. His hands shaking as he dials a number he knows by heart but suddenly feels foreign on his fingertips. "Honey," he says, his voice shaking with emotions he can't even name. Relief and joy and disbelief and gratitude all mixed together into something that doesn't have a word in English or Mandarin. "I'm coming home, and I have something incredible to tell you, something that's going to change our lives in ways we never imagined possible." Through the phone, he can hear his daughter Emma in the background asking if Daddy is in trouble. Her 12-year-old voice carrying the worry that children shouldn't have to feel about their parents' legal status, and his wife's voice breaks slightly as she tells her that Daddy is going to be just fine, better than fine actually. The Chicago skyline looks different when he walks out of that federal building 2 hours later. Not like a place where he's been tolerated as a guest who might be asked to leave at any moment, but like a place where he truly belongs, where his success is legitimate and permanent and protected by the same laws that once threatened to tear it all away. The evening air feels crisp and full of possibility as Agent Rodriguez shakes his hand and says something that makes his eyes fill with tears he's been holding back for 15 years. "Welcome to America, Mr. Chen. Really welcome this time, as a citizen in waiting rather than someone whose status could be questioned or revoked." When he walks back into Chen Industries the next morning, 3,000 employees are waiting for him in the lobby, and the applause that erupts sounds like thunder rolling through the 42 floors of a building that suddenly feels more like home than it ever has before. But the real moment, the one that breaks him completely and rebuilds him as something stronger, comes when little Sarah from the mailroom, the granddaughter of Irish immigrants who came through Ellis Island with nothing but hope and determination, walks up with tears in her eyes and hands him a small American flag, saying simply, "We always knew you belonged here, Mr. Chen. We were just waiting for the government to figure it out too." And as he stands there, surrounded by the people whose lives are intertwined with his, holding that flag in hands that are finally steady, he realizes that sometimes the worst day of your life can become the first day of the rest of your life, that sometimes the system that seems designed to break you can actually be the thing that finally makes you whole. Isn't it amazing how the very thing that threatens to destroy your American dream can end up making it more real and more precious than you ever imagined possible? How justice and mercy can wear the disguise of federal agents with badges and stern expressions.